Hello, everyone. Very good Erev Shabbat. The parsha begins, Shiur yitro. Oh, say Moshe. Yisro, who was the Kohen of Midian, and Moshe's father-in-law, heard. He heard something. So the Torah itself says that he heard about Yetzias Mitzrayim. So if the Torah says he heard about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and that was the reason that he now came. So the question arises, why does Rashi quote the Medrash? Ma Shoma. What did he hear? The Torah said that what he heard. He heard that the Jewish people left Egypt. That they went out. So then what does the Medrash mean? Ma Shmua Shoma Ubo. What did he hear that made him come? I saw on the internet a rehearsal of the New York Philharmonic, conducted by Leonard Bernstein. And at the rehearsal, they play the Beethoven Symphony, and they play it all the way through. When it was over, since it's a rehearsal, so Bernstein pointed to one of the violinists, and he said, "You didn't come in on time. You were off a fraction." And now, to my trained musical ear, I didn't hear any problem. I was completely unaware that somehow this violinist missed his cue. We're talking about this enormous orchestra, the New York Philharmonic, and there are so many, the sound is overwhelming. So if one of them didn't come in on time, they didn't come in on time. It would not be noticeable to the untrained ear. But to Leonard Bernstein, he heard it. He heard it immediately. That out of the 50 violinists, only 49 were playing. And that's what makes a person a great conductor, is that he's able to hear the faintest sound or lack of sound. So this is true in life also. To a certain extent, we hear what we want to hear. The world is full of noise, all sorts of sounds. So we even have a phrase for it, that we can tune ourselves out. In other words, the noise is there, the sound is there, but I'm not listening. It doesn't affect me. That's what Rashi means here in quoting the Medrash. The Tony said he heard about Yitzias Mitzrayim. Everybody heard about Yitzias Mitzrayim. We say that Shomu Ami Yergozun Chilachad Yoshe Ploshes Ozni Valu Alufe Edom Ele Moav Yosei Murad. The whole world heard about Yitzias Mitzrayim. It was the headline that day in the papers. But nobody really, what did they hear? And we always hear what is relevant to us. The nuance that we are affected by. So that's what Rashi says here. Mashmua Shoma'u Bo. What did he hear? What did Yisro hear? We know what the other nations of the world, they were afraid the Jews were going to conquer them. Okay, what did Yisro hear? What was relevant to him? So Rashi quotes the Medrash that the two things that he heard was Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes Amalek, the splitting of the Red Sea and the war of Amalek. That's what he heard. That's what was relevant to him. So it doesn't say that he heard about the 10 plaguing, or that he heard about the defeat of the Egyptian and letting the Jews go. He heard about Kriyas Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf is the supreme miracle in the list of the miracles that characterize Yitzias Mitzrayim. So when people hear about Yitzias Mitzrayim and they don't know the details, so that would not be the first time in the history of humankind that a subjected nation revolted and left. That's one way of looking at it. But he heard not Yitzias Mitzrayim, which can be attributed to many forces. He heard that there was Kriyas Yamsuf, that there was something that occurred that was so miraculous that it took the whole situation out of any normalcy. And therefore, he comes to a sense of God. Yisro is the ultimate searcher in biblical literature. Because I'll say that he tried out all the religions of the world. He's looking for something. He realizes that he's missing something. He's looking for it. He's searching for it. And therefore he experiments with all religions, with all the avodah zarahs that exist. That's pretty much the story of modern humankind. It tries all sorts of things because it's looking for something. It's looking for meaning in its life. It's looking for something important, values above and beyond everyday life. That leads people to make all sorts of wild decisions, to worship all sorts Avodah Zarah. But it's a description of the search of humankind to be connected to the Creator. There's a famous discussion recorded in the Hasidic world regarding a discussion between the Kotzker Rebbe and his friend, the Vorker Rebbe. The Vorker asked the Kotzker, he said, how come we find in the Torah that when the Jewish people sinned at the golden calf, God is willing to forgive them? But when they sin at the Meraglim with the spies, the Ribbono Shel Olam is not willing to forgive them. If we look at it, he said, we would say that the sin of the golden calf is much greater. It's much more a denial of God than the fact that the Jews didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael. Yet we find that when they sinned at the Egel, they were forgiven. They did tshuva and they were forgiven. And when they sinned with the Meraglim, they were not forgiven. So the Vorker said, very original idea, that the Jewish people did not yet know that tshuva helps. And they did tshuva at the Egel, at the golden calf. They repented without having the ulterior motive that they would be forgiven. They just repented because they knew they did wrong. They didn't do it to ameliorate the sin. They didn't do it to make the judgment lighter. And therefore they were forgiven. But by the Meraglim, they already knew, in the case of the spies, they already knew that tshuva helps, that tshuva would erase the sin. So when they did tshuva there, they did it with an ulterior motive. So the tshuva was not wholehearted. Excuse me. And therefore, they were not forgiven. That's what the Vorker says. So the legend is that the Kotzker thought about it. And he said, I don't agree with you. I have a different viewpoint for the matter. He said, by the Egel, the Jewish people were searching for God. They said to the Egel, El Elohecha Yisrael. This is our God. They're looking for something. They're searching. But Ribbono Shel Olam forgave them because he realizes that human beings are searching. By the Meraglim, they weren't searching, but by Meraglim, there was a question of their honor and their position and their leisure. So he's not going to forgive them because of the fact that they don't want anything more. They just want more, so to speak, more comfort, an easier life. That he would not forgive them for. So Yisro, that's why when the Torah describes him, Kohen Midyon Chosei Moshe. How can you put those two titles together? The priest of Midyan. He's in charge of every avodah zarah in the world, but he's Moshe's father-in-law. And the answer is because Yisro was searching. When he was the Kohen Midyan, he was searching. He was looking for something. Person that searches, even if one spends most of one's time on earth, not find anything, nevertheless, so to speak, in heaven, they grant him credit for searching, for wanting. The Baal Shem Tov said very famously that people are judged not only by what they actually are and accomplished, but they're judged by what they want to be. Who would I like to be? So that's part of the judgment also. So even though he's Kohen Midyan, he's still Chosei Moshe, because of the fact that all of his life is this search for a connection to godliness. So therefore, what he heard in the symphony, he heard Kriyas Yamsuf, which is the great miracle that the Lord performed, that has nothing to do with anybody else. And in his search, therefore, he found somewhat of an answer that would enable him to have a Parsha of the Torah written on his behalf. The second thing that he heard, again, in the whole cacophony of sound that accompanied all of this, he heard the Milchemes Amalek, that in spite of all of the miracles, and that in spite of everything that the world saw, there would arise Amalek that would attempt to destroy the Jewish people. Now, one would imagine that after Kriyas Yamsuf, the Jewish people would be untouchable. And no one would think that they had the ability to defeat them. But that's not true. Famous medrash that Rashi brings, that the first victim fell to the fire, but he cooled off the fire. Others said, okay, I'll be able to do it. And that's it's a recurring theme in history, in the story of the world. People believe in all sorts of theories that have been proven on the ground to be unsuccessful. Yet there are millions of people that still believe in the theory. say it wasn't performed correctly or it had the wrong leadership. But if you do it right, it's good. That's what Amalek says. Amalek says the Egyptians, they were the wrong people to fight the Jews. They didn't have the technology. They didn't have the ability. They couldn't put together their strength correctly. But we're going to be able to do it. We're going to be able to do it. And that's why in the Haggadah we say, Shebachol dor v'dor omdim aleinu l'chaloseinu. One would think that one generation would learn from the previous generation. The lesson of history is don't start up with the Jews. Eventually, it's bad for you. Eventually, you pay a price for it. The decline of the Roman Church is directly traceable to the Inquisition and the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. It was without a pun, it's a cardinal error. They thought, they're going to do it. And need not say in our time what has happened. Europe was destroyed because of its anti-Semitism. Tens of millions of people were lost. True, the Jews paid a price, but look what the price that the non-Jewish world paid. Communist world in the Soviet Union was brought down by starting up with the Jews. Look what's happening in the Middle East. So that's what Yisro heard. Yisro heard that the power of Amalek is that it doesn't learn from history. So it says, Hashem b'Amalek midor dor. Doesn't see what happened, doesn't see the consequences. Somehow, this time they're going to be able to do it. There's no doubt in my mind that if Hamas and the Hezbollah and Iran would have realized the consequences of October 7th, they wouldn't have done October 7th. It doesn't pay for them. But again, you think that you're going to do it. This is it. And Yisro heard that. Yisro heard that that's a recurring theme. And that the question will always therefore be, are you Kohen Midian? Or are you Hosei Moshe? Can't be both. Are you? We find in Tanakh that when Yoshua ben Nun was besieging the city of Jericho, so he had a vision at night, and a figure appeared before him that he could not identify. So he only asked him one question. He said, Alonu ata ilitzarenu. Whose side are you on? Are you with us? Or are you with our enemies? That question is an eternal question. It's a question within the Jewish world also. There are many Jews that can be found, unfortunately, guilty of the wrong answer. Whose side are you on? But Yisro heard that that question will always be asked. It's an inescapable question. And that you'll always have to choose. And many times it's going to be uncomfortable to choose. So the greatness of Yisro is that he heard these two messages out of all of the stories of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The two messages that were most relevant to him. Because he doesn't want to be Kohen Midyan. He wants to be Hosei Moshe. That's why the Torah emphasizes he brought Zipporah and he brought Gershom and Eliezer. He sits with Moshe. He gives him advice. Because he says, Ato Yadati, now I know what the whole story is. Now I know where my search ends, so to speak. So Yisro remains an archetypical figure. There used to be a sign in the New York subway, you don't have to be Jewish to enjoy Levy's rye bread. You don't have to be Jewish. If you're someone that searches, you'll find wherever you come from, whoever you are. And that's why the Torah begins by Yishma Yisro. Yisro heard. He heard what that one violin was missing. Heard that somehow it's a little atonal. It's not what it should be. And therefore he went to find out. Much of the problem of modern society is that it is not searching. And especially if one is sunk in the physical luxuries of our time, so then one doesn't even realize that there may be more to life, than modernizing a kitchen. And maybe that's why the Parsha of Yisro contains the Aseret HaDvarim, the Ten Commandments, the revelation at Sinai, the eternal Torah, because it wants to emphasize to us the ability to hear what's missing and the ability to respond in kind. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you for coming. Stay warm over Shabbat. How are you in the sun?
Just a question. How would that apply today to non-Jews researching? What would they find?
that God is on the side of Israel.
You don't like plugging the camera.
Plugging the camera.
Yeah, yeah.
The USB now.
Oh, that's still the problem? Ah, okay, where is the camera?
Sorry?
The Germans were Nazis. They were just
I figured out the problem. What's going wrong with your car?
can't know. Thank you.
Pleasure. I guess I just came to here. Yeah, I came to the street. I guess I'm gonna need you to send it to me. Yeah. Oh, but you have the problem. It doesn't work with their computers. Send it.
I did last week. It was
Oh, so you figured out the issue?